The End of Oak Street is a pretty interesting film. Well, actually, the premise is probably the most interesting thing about it. The idea of an entire town being sucked through a portal and transported back to the dinosaur era is pretty awesome. It's a really unique concept, and I can't really say that I've seen any other film do something like it, but unfortunately, the rest of the film doesn't support the concept. Now, we have spoilers ahead, so be warned. My biggest problem with The End of Oak Street is I don't think it really knows the kind of movie it wants to be. On the one hand, you have this really cool sci-fi idea about transporting an entire town back in time. On the other hand, you have a dinosaur survival movie. And both of these ideas could make for great films, but when you put them together, I think the story starts to become a little convoluted. It felt like we were bouncing off walls that were closing in around us, and we had no clear path of where the film was gonna go in the end. And unfortunately, the characters didn't help with that. One of my biggest pet peeves in movies is when characters do stupid things simply because the plot needs them to. You know the kind I'm talking about. Something happens, and you're sitting there thinking, as long as he doesn't do this, and then he does it. The End of Oak Street is full of those moments. Most of the characters are annoying at best and awful at worst. And weirdly, the one character who I thought was somewhat reasonable was the dad, except the movie seems to want us to see him as the villain of the family. We're supposed to believe he's this raging alcoholic who constantly keeps things from his wife, but we really only get one example of each. We're told these things about him, but they aren't established well enough for me to actually buy into them. And that becomes a problem when Anne Hathaway's character eventually explodes at him. She spends most of the film very angry, and I don't understand why. There's clearly supposed to be a lot of resentment and tension between the two of them, but the movie doesn't do enough to establish where the resentment comes from. So instead of thinking, wow, this relationship has been falling apart for years, I was more often thinking, why are you angry? And I think that's a problem throughout the film. The movie wants us to feel certain things about these characters and the world they live in, but it doesn't always do the work necessary to make us feel them. And the same thing happens with the dinosaurs. Now, I love dinosaurs, I love dinosaur films, and I think you can do a lot of interesting things with them, but I don't think this film gave them the personality that they needed to have a real impact on the story. They basically show up, eat somebody, then disappear, and then another dinosaur shows up and does the same thing, and then another one. Compare that to Jurassic Park. The velociraptors in Jurassic Park actually felt like characters. From the very first scene, we're shown that they're intelligent, they work together, they know how to hunt, and they're ruthless. You remember them, you know what makes them dangerous. There's a personality to them. The dinosaurs in The End of Oak Street just felt like a collection of different dinosaurs that the filmmakers wanted to put on screen, and I think that's a missed opportunity because the idea of an entire town suddenly being transported into the dinosaur era is pretty cool. I would have loved to see more of the actual consequences. How do they get food? How do they deal with resources running out? Are they going to work together to survive? And then you can add the dinosaurs on top of that. And while I wasn't necessarily bored watching it, I also never really felt like the story was going somewhere. Transporting a town back in time is a cool idea, and I'd actually love to see someone take that concept and really run with it. And I think a dinosaur survival movie is also a great idea. I just don't think combining the two made either one better in this case. If anything, I think it watered down both of them. So overall, The End of Oak Street is a film that I really wanted to like, but just didn't. It has a cool idea, but no execution. It has some cool visuals, but no story to drive it home. What did you think of the film? Let me know in the comments. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, share it with someone who has seen The End of Oak Street, subscribe for more film-related content, and I will see you next week.